everybody. Welcome to the Big Igloo Podcast. Smart theology, dumb dad jokes.
That's right.
Oh, and I've got one for you today.
Oh boy. Yes, he does.
I do. I ran it by these guys, and it was very groan worthy. So appreciate that. Who is the short? You can't spoil it. Now you know it, but just play along. Play along. Mm-hmm. All right. Yep. Who is the shortest man in the Bible?
Zacchaeus.
No, you would think Zacchaeus, right? But no. It's actually Job's friend, Bildad, because the Bible says he was a Shuhite. It took John a while to get that one. Just saying.
It went straight.
Shuhite.
I'm throwing him under the bus right now. So
absolutely.
All right, we're continuing on in this Hollywood Heroes series. And gentlemen, this is going to be the most controversial one.
All right.
All right. We'll see how much hate mail we get with this one.
Don't cancel us, please.
Yeah, don't cancel us. All right. But I'm just going to warn you straight up. This one's going to cause a little bit of controversy. This has been a controversial figure. And so I'm going to start off kind of like a massive disclaimer here. Okay. Yes. And here is the disclaimer. Number one is, listen, as Christians, we are to be discerning. We're supposed to be discerning of the culture, not just take things in. We've been talking about this idea of receive, reject, redeem. What can we do? And here, with any of these movies, with any of these books, whatever, you can't just accept everything that comes to you. Right. You know, we have to process through some of these things. But sometimes I think we can have an overreaction in the Christian community where we can maybe reject too much and not look, you know, and there's a couple places in the New Testament where Paul actually, where he's standing at Mars Hill, right? And he quotes their poets. He sees this rock to an unknown God. And he's like, but actually. And the thing of it is like he looks for a meaningful place in which to engage with the culture. Yeah. Another spot when he's writing to Titus and he's telling Titus to go along and to appoint different. He needs to appoint some elders, and these are the qualifications, things to look for. And he even says, this is my paraphrase of it, but Titus, you got your work cut out for you because even their own prophets of Crete, call these people drunkards and liars, or gluttons and liars, gluttons and liars. Yeah. And so he knows the language. He's not legitimizing their prophets, these false, what you would call false prophets. Sure. He's not saying they preach truth, but he's finding truth in the things that they say. And it becomes this point of intersection. And so we are going to talk about, for a second here, for today's podcast, we're going to talk about Harry Potter. Okay, we're going to talk about Harry Potter. Now, I know as soon as I say that, some of you maybe don't mind. Some of you might want to shut this off right now. And I want to just tell you, listen, it is not my desire to tell you one way or the other to watch these, to not watch these. And again, if we just think about the receive, reject, redeem thing, obviously we have to reject witchcraft.
Absolutely.
And I want to tell just a short little story here, about the height of the Harry Potter craze, when all the books were being sold and stuff. I remember we went to our youth conference, Desperation out in Colorado Springs, and I was walking through a Barnes & Noble, and there was this massive Harry Potter display, all the books and everything. And as I was walking through, one of my youth leaders, so this was an adult that was sponsoring the trip, he just looked over there and he just shook his head. He's like, "Oh, it's terrible." And I was just genuinely curious. I hadn't read any of the books. Right. I hadn't seen any of the movies. I'd kind of read some stuff from some different Christian people that were saying, you shouldn't read these things, you shouldn't watch this, okay? And, I was just genuinely curious. I said, why do you say that? And he said to me, because I used to be a witch.
Oh, well, yep, that'll do it for you.
And I was like, please tell me more. And it turned out in high school, like he had dabbled in witchcraft. He had actually gotten like the books and the different pagan rituals and stuff like that. And so here's the thing. I want to, pastorally, I want to be sensitive that there are people in our world who some people have an unhealthy fixation or I don't know, just pay improper attention to supernatural things or have an unhealthy desire for those things. I don't think this supernatural is an unhealthy desire because we were made to walk in communion with God, right?
Yeah.
And so by definition, we have a supernatural relationship. If you believe in God and you believe God empowers you, that's believing in the supernatural.
Yeah.
We as Christians, we believe in the supernatural. But anything that is not under the lordship of Jesus Christ, anything that's supernatural, that's not within the realm of Christ or his kingdom, then yes, that by definition we have to reject. Okay. So some of you might be out there and say like, well, see, there you go, Chris. So stop talking about Harry Potter because it's all bad. It's all witchcraft. And I respect that on one hand. Okay. But on the other hand, I also understand as people, we are creatives. We tell stories. We're creatures of stories. And where do you stop it?
Yeah.
Can we never have a story where somebody has some sort of supernatural ability?
Yeah.
Is that really where we want to draw the line? Or
Right.
can we say that, hey, God gave us imagination? And I think any kid who's ever looked up at the clouds and saw birds flying around thought, wouldn't it be awesome if I could just take off and fly with them?
Yeah.
I think there's something amazing about, letting our imagination go to places like that. Right. And so the problem is as Christians, sometimes we can be really inconsistent. Mm-hmm. And again, just hear me out here. If you're listening, hear me out here. And again, if you never want to watch Harry Potter, that's fine.
Yeah.
But hear me out here. Where do we draw the line?
Right. Yeah.
And this is a mature question. This is not, Paul took on the issue of eating meat in his day, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And that doesn't seem like a big deal in our day. That's because they aren't sacrificing it to other deities in our day, but they were in Paul's day. And Paul basically said, listen, for some of you, it's okay to eat meat. For some of you, you can't do it because it reminds you of the temple practices you once engaged in.
Sure.
So if you're weak, don't do it.
Yep.
And I would say the same thing. Listen, if the imagery of Harry Potter, if some of that stuff is not, you don't feel right, it violates something inside, then by all means, do not. However, don't just shut off this podcast, because I think even if you never see those movies, we're going to talk about some of the themes that are in here that I think if you got a friend who watches or has read the Harry Potter books,
Sure.
there are some connections to Jesus. And in Frank and Zach Turek's book, you just read this quote earlier. What does he say, John?
He says, arguably, there has not been a single fictional character in popular modern literature film that has more in common with the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ than Harry Potter.
Whoa, time out. What? I mean, that's a loaded statement. And so that's kind of our job today. And we're not going to cover everything he covered.
Sure.
Once again, Frank goes deep in all these chapters here and stuff, but we're going to hit on some of these themes. And again, if you're listening here and maybe you've read the books or maybe you've seen the movies or maybe you haven't, again, I'm not endorsing one way or the other, but I just want us to be wise. But I want you to engage and think about some of these themes because I'm just going to I'll just unpack this real quick and then we'll dialogue here. Yeah. But there's kind of these four themes that Frank taps into here. Is number one, prophecy. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. Here's how I would frame this. This is a little more of an apologetic conversation. Right. I think that you could, if you have a coworker who maybe obsesses about Harry Potter or something like that, you could take these four things, go to your coworker, your neighbor, whoever who's obsessed with Harry Potter, and you could say something like this. Say, hey, I've never read those books, and I don't know that I'm interested, but have you ever thought about how much Harry Potter has in common with Jesus?
How about that?
For example, there was a prophecy concerning his birth and what he would come to do and all that, right? Is that true? And of course, your coworker will say yes. And then, well, doesn't Harry kind of embody this kind of like goodness and this like morality, like the of self-sacrifice and all that? And they'll say yes, and we'll get to the desire thing here in a second, right? And then doesn't Harry like die to defeat his enemy and then rise again?
Yeah.
And doesn't Harry say that essentially doesn't Harry Potter essentially get to the fact that death is basically an enemy that needs to be overcome? Do you know the Bible says that? Did you know that's what Paul says? Death is the last enemy. And by the way, how does Harry do it? Through love.
Yeah.
Love is the means by which Harry Potter. And one of the things I would say is this. Some people are like, yeah, but magic. Okay. Right. Okay. But here's the thing. When you really survey Harry Potter though, okay, again, I'm not telling you to go watch the movie. I'm just thinking through. When you survey it, it really is about good versus evil. Yeah. Magic is the thing that either the good side uses or the bad side uses, and really it becomes a question of morality. How do you wield this thing? We could take that theme with money, we could take that theme with power, we could take that theme with so many things. We could put that in the gap, and ultimately it is a good versus evil showdown.
I've got a great quote that goes along with that.
There you go. Go for it, John.
It says, "Human nature is human nature, whether or not you can use a wand."
Yeah.
That's quoting J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling. Yeah.
I think that's what was amazing to me was Frank goes and digs up a lot of, if you don't know who J.K. Rowling, she's the author of Harry Potter. And she absolutely admits to these Christian themes being in her books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's made me just think, how much as the church have we vilified her unnecessarily? I don't know what her, I don't know where she is at faith-wise or anything like that. And again, no, we can't endorse witchcraft and hopefully we've acknowledged that and handled that. At the same time, though, too, can a story just be a story that we just take in and just see these themes, right?
Yeah, and what I want to add to that is just, for me, I mean, Harry Potter's like, I started reading it in 5th grade. And this is like the first.
We just lost several viewers. They're like, I can't believe Travis Johnson. Oh, but sorry, can I interrupt you just for a second? Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Just full disclosure here, John. You know nothing of the books, right?
No, this is the most I know about it. Is this chapter I read,
and so you know the beginning, middle, and end all now because Frank spoiled all that. Okay. All the books. I never read the books or anything like that. I did. About the time, I don't know, about the 4th or 5th movie, and I knew kids in the youth group were watching it, so I was kind of like, I need some awareness here, and so I just kind of went in with it, and so I have watched the movies. Okay, I didn't read the books or anything like that. Actually watched the movies with my kids because they had friends who were talking about it. So listen, I do not judge that gentleman who said he'd never let his kids watch it. That is his call to make. Yep. I'm totally fine with that, right? But for me, I wanted to sit and watch it with my kids and talk about these things. And, if I saw my kids trying to practice dark arts, we'd have another conversation.
Absolutely.
But Travis, you read the books, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're kind of on the spectrum here. Like you're all out.
I'm probably a nerd on it. Yeah. Honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I've watched the movies. John knows nothing. So that's just so our panel knows. Now,
Absolutely.
Resume your thought there.
So 5th grade Travis started reading these books, and that's really what got me kind of into reading. And so it kind of sparked this whole like journey of learning and things like that in me. But I had a family member that she had a big problem with me reading the books.
Yeah.
And so we had this dialogue of this is several years before I would, even begin thinking about Christianity. And so for me, it's always been about, it seems like there's an inconsistency within Christianity, because we've talked about Iron Man, who was an adulterer, like a womanizer.
Yep.
And so it's like, why do we segregate kind of witchcraft as like, we don't touch that, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, but we allow the adultery, the lust, this.
Because then we'd have nothing left to watch.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Well, but honestly, I mean, every aspect of Hollywood, unfortunately, now is cranking out stuff that as Christians we should reject.
Absolutely.
And so, that's the whole point of the series is like,
right.
what do we need to reject? What do we need to redeem?
Yeah.
And then what can we receive?
Yep. Absolutely.
So it's like, I mean, Harry Potter is, I've grown up with it.
It is interesting that, if people want to be really consistent, the Bible compares rebellion to the sin of witchcraft.
Yeah.
And, just being a pastor at a church,
Sure.
I see plenty of rebellion.
I was very rebellious. So.
I'm not even. I know. No, I was even thinking. Honestly, I wasn't even thinking that. I was just thinking people who don't want to fill out their connection cards. But anyway, we won't go there for a second.
Now we've lost all our subscribers. Thanks, Chris.
We're down to 2. My mom and dad. All right. No, but I mean, seriously. You want to? If we want to get serious about this, the Bible does talk about just an attitude of rebellion. So if you want to sit there and like talk about witchcraft, how evil witchcraft is, are you regulating your own heart? And again, that's not to justify or again, if you don't want to read these things, don't. But let's explore some of these themes because like for example, Harry, There is this prophecy. Now, we talked about how C.S. Lewis talked about how all these different narratives in his day, and of course, I mean, Harry Potter comes out way later after, C.S. Lewis, but he talked about this idea that Christianity was the true myth.
Sure.
And isn't it interesting that someone like a J.K. Rowling steps in and uses this prophetic element that it's foretold Harry Potter will be this deliverer, he'll be this person. By the way, now help me out here, Travis. You're more the nerd here. He is part Muggle. Right?
Yes.
Right?
Well, yeah. His mom and dad both were witches, but his mom was a muggle.
A muggle.
A muggle born.
A muggle born is like a human, basically, right?
Yeah. Just a normal human being with no
powers, right? Yeah. Right. So what's really interesting is even at that, you see there's another parallel to, again, like a Christ-like figure in that.
Yeah.
Here comes Jesus, who is God, but he's born of the flesh, right? And he's here to basically reconcile creation. In fact, Paul says there's neither Greek nor Jew, slave nor free, woman, man, that we are all united in Christ. And there's a truth there that Harry Potter taps into this idea that you've kind of got this division between muggles and the witches and stuff, and that basically Harry becomes this person that becomes like the bridge between these two worlds. Again, a very Christ-like theme.
Right. Yeah.
Again, it's not
That's
perfect, but it's an interesting analogy, right?
Yeah.
But back to the prophecy, and you can look at, I didn't print out this verse, but if you look at like Isaiah, it's escaping me right now. The one that says he was wounded, wounded for our transgression, bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of his peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. If you read that, that was written some 700 years in Isaiah. That was written some 700 years before Jesus. But what's really interesting is that Isaiah 53, right? Isaiah 53, 4 and 5. It says that if you read that to someone, and you say, who is this describing? People will tell you Jesus of Nazareth. And then if you ask them, where's it from? Most of the time they'll say the New Testament. Yeah. And it's not. So if you say, actually, that was written 700 years before Christ.
and Isaiah 53, right?
Yeah.
Is the kind of the one chapter of the Bible, of the Old Testament, that the Jews reject.
A lot of temple or not synagogues and a lot of synagogues and houses of worship for Orthodox Jewish people will not read Isaiah 53. Because it's so close, right?
So incriminating to like Jesus being the Messiah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's called the forbidden prophecy or something like that. Like that which shall not be named. Another Harry Potter tie. But it's interesting. So you've got this idea of prophecy, right? And so this prophetic element, again, that can be a conversation with somebody to be like, if they're really into Harry Potter, say, hey, that's interesting. And there's other stories that tap into that theme too of like, there will be one that comes. But once again, we actually have that in our story.
Yeah. Couple things.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting about, I'd say the prophecy aspect of Harry Potter that Dumbledore, right? Dumbledore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of represented John the Baptist in that recognition that he was the chosen one. And it wasn't something that Harry Potter had to tell him. It's something he recognized and knew.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
No,
I'm very green into this. But it's that idea that I think Dumbledore had a quote in this book that says, your blood is worth more than mine. Is the idea that John the Baptist was like, I can't baptize you, Jesus.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting.
You're Jesus Christ. You should be baptizing me.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of just, it goes back to the humility of Jesus and in this case, Harry Potter. And it's just kind of an interesting cross between prophecy of that Dumbledore knew this was the chosen one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the other flip of that, one thing that really cemented my faith in Christianity actually is something you shared a long time ago. And it was about the 8 prophecies fulfilled.
Yeah.
You remember that? Like the quarters? Yeah. Could you go over that real quick and refresh my mind?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's good, John. That's one of my favorite apologetic arguments. That was your guys' senior night.
Yes.
That we did that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there was a mathematician by the name of Peter Stoner. And he went in and took all of the prophecies of basically messianic, Messiah prophecies. He took all of them, and there's over 300 or something like that. He narrowed it down to 8. What would be the odds of one person fulfilling 8 of these. And he picked specifically born in Bethlehem, betrayed by a kiss, like he went through like these 8 things. And he was like, what would be the odds that one person could fulfill 8 of these?
Right.
And then by his calculations, it came out to 1 into the 10 to the 17th power.
It's a big number.
That's a 1 followed by 17 zeros. I don't even know what that is. All right. All right. It's bigger than a Google, right? Right. Isn't it? Yeah. Anyway. So 1 in 10 to the 17th power, that was the odds. And he came up with this, basically this, what you want to call it? Like just a mental picture here. He said, to understand that, he said that would be like taking the entire state of Texas, filling it up 2 feet high with silver dollars. Okay. Filling that up 2 feet high, grabbing one of those silver dollars, marking it with a magic marker or something like that, flying in a helicopter, just circling, around Texas, right? And just take that thing and just chuck it out, right? Into the sea of silver dollars the size of the state of Texas. Then it would be like blindfolding yourself, walking around randomly all over Texas, reaching down and picking up that one silver dollar. According to Peter Stoner, that was his calculation.
That was just for 8.
That was just for 8. He said if you compound it to then 300, if you compound it to 300 prophecies, he said it was like taking the smallest part of an atom. Filling up the state of Texas 2 feet high,
That's incredible.
And so it really is amazing. And so once again, there's an apologetic argument for, whether your friend likes Harry Potter or not, just you could pull the Isaiah 53 test to say, who does this describe? If they say Jesus of Nazareth, say, hey, isn't that interesting? Because this was written 700 years before he walked the earth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's good stuff, man. So once again, we see this idea with this prophetic element. When we go to morality, again, I like what you said, John. We do see it really ultimately is a showdown in Harry Potter versus good versus evil. We've kind of already mentioned that, and that magic, like you said, is just a tool. Like it's how does it manifest with this camp of people? How does it manifest? But there's also this realm of desire.
Yeah.
Erised, is that how you say it? Yeah.
Desire spelled backwards.
Desire spelled backwards, yeah.
So,
explain that to us. What's with this mirror?
Sure. So, it's actually the first film that the mirror of Erised was basically this thing that when standing in front of it would show you like the deepest, most like desires of your heart.
Yeah.
And so for Harry, he stumbles across this mirror and he sees his parents who, they had died. When he was like a year old.
Yeah.
And so he's never known his family. And through all these circumstances, he's had to live with basically his mom's sister, his aunt and uncle, who are just absolutely, they're awful.
Yeah, they're terrible.
And they're not magical. And so they do everything they can to kind of squash this bit of Harry. And so anytime like there's like weird things that happen, like they're there to squash it down. And so Harry sees this and like, it's kind of like this thing that comes alive.
Yeah.
And then he gets excited. He wants to show his friend, his parents. And so he goes and grabs his best friend, Ron. And when Ron steps in front, he comes from a family of 9 older brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And so as he's standing in front of it, he sees himself alone kind of as the greatest of all of them. And so he kind of sees, like, you kind of see this reflection of contrasting Harry, knowing his family, and Ron kind of wanted to have this kind of, standalone. Yeah. Like.
Sounds like Joseph.
Interesting. Yeah.
A little prideful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because, exactly. That plays into this whole thing. So there's this kind of like pure of heart trait with Harry that, like the thing he's desiring. He's desiring the thing that, ultimately it's not, he wants family, whereas, Ron doesn't really, And so, and then I know there's other people that look into the mirror too and see some different things.
Absolutely.
And so again, it's just kind of this manifestation of your heart, which is an interesting thing to think about. Like if I could, again, just a thought experiment, if I could look into a mirror that could show me what I really want, what would that be? Because for many of us, that's where idolatry would be exposed.
Sure.
The Bible talks about that.
I've got this great quote. So I found this 2017.
Okay.
So it was just some, and I don't, this is some anonymous guy that's posted on a blog that I stumbled across. So it says, the older I get, the more interesting the mirror of Erised becomes. Do people really know the deepest desire of their heart? We all want things, but when it comes down to the one thing you yearn for deep in your being, is it so easy to give it a name? When Harry looked in the mirror and saw his family, it wasn't instantly clear to him what exactly the mirror was doing. He didn't look at his parents' faces and think, oh yes, this is the one thing I desire more than any other in the whole existence. Certainly family was something he always wanted, but it was only a conscious desire in specific circumstances. When he looked in the mirror, it wasn't the realization of something he'd known all along. It was a feeling. And I wonder what I would see, because honestly, I couldn't tell you. And I think once I saw that reflection, it would make all the sense in the world. It would be familiar ache in the region, or the heart region, that is yet to be successfully examined. And that's the magic of it, really, isn't it? Showing that something that we've always known in our heart, but never had the words for it in our head.
Wow.
And so as a kid, like I remember thinking about like, oh man, that is just crazy. Like, what would I see? What is that deepest desire?
Yeah.
And man, now looking back at it as a Christian, it's like, I mean, Jesus.
Yeah.
God is that one thing that I think every single one of us ache for and long for to have a relationship with. And it's like this, what is that desire? And now, of course, we try to fill those things with other things, which is idolatry. But yeah, as a Christian, it's like, man, that is the one thing.
Well, and I love thinking about that. Like, okay, what is the one thing that I would want, if I saw this mirror? But it's like, think about that with Jesus as he's walking this earth. I was just having lunch with somebody and we went to Hebrews 11, which is the Hall of Faith. And I said, man, it's a real shame that the chapter divide falls right there, because the next lines in 12:1 are, therefore, since we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, he just laid out all these people that, people of the faith and all that. Let us lay aside the weight and the sin, like, hey, there's this great cloud of witnesses, all this people that have gone before us. Let us lay aside every weight and the hindrance and the sin which so easily besets us, and let us run with endurance the race that's put before us, basically following Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross. So, I mean, it's almost like, if there was this mirror, this Arised mirror in front of Jesus, it's like, what would we see? We would see humanity united with him in the new heavens and new earth. Like, that would be the thing Jesus, Hebrews kind of clues us in. It was the joy that was set before him. It's heaven and earth reunited again. That's his deepest desire, Yeah. So that's an interesting, thought thing there. But yeah, so spoiler alert, for if you've not seen Harry Potter or anything like that, once again, you have this idea of death and resurrection.
Sure.
That Voldemort, right? The evil one, right? He comes after Harry. He basically destroys. I'm doing a very simple job. I've only seen the movies, I think, like twice, whatever. But he comes in, and what's interesting is he takes the life of Harry, and it's almost echoes Paul when he's writing. He says, had the rulers and authorities in this world known they were crucifying the Lord of glory, they wouldn't have done it. Yeah. And what's interesting is that's essentially the plot. When Voldemort comes in, he kills Harry Potter, but that becomes the instrument of his own destruction.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it literally is ripped out of the pages of the Bible.
Yeah.
Like it's just in a different form, but that's the plot. It's the same plot.
Yeah.
Like, had he known, he wouldn't have killed Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, is Satan and the rulers and authorities. I mean, I think there's a dual meaning there. I think it's talking about the rulers of this earth, natural kings and kingdoms, but I think he's talking about princes, principalities and powers as well. That this whole host is watching, kill him. And then when Jesus dies, that's where he makes this open display. He defeats them. Colossians says that it's there that he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them at the cross.
Sure.
Yeah.
And J.K. Rowling says, I mean, even herself, like the two kind of themes that encompass the whole series is the last enemy to be defeated is death.
Right.
Which is what, 1 Corinthians. And then she said the second one is where your heart is, there your treasure will be also.
So that's that desire thing.
So the desire, yeah. And so it's like, there you have it. Like,
yeah. Well, and Frank alluded to this, I know, in the book, but just that there's that theme of love as well. It's like that self-sacrificial love. It's not love in the way our culture defines it, but it's love in the sense of like ultimately committed to selfless, and it's the one thing that Harry can do that Voldemort won't do.
Yeah.
Right? Is love. and he kind of knows that that's how to defeat him. Like there's a way in which he's, you know, he gets that.
And so much so that Dumbledore is constantly telling him it's like love is your greatest your greatest power. And he even says, Dumbledore says, you know, above magic and all that, love and friendship is the greatest power that we have.
Wow.
Just crazy that
it's funny because like even like reading this, I kind of got the sense of like, you know, like when somebody gives you advice over and over again, like I just pictured Harry rolling his eyes. Yes, I know I have love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's just been drilled in him from the day one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would like to make a jump to what's it called? The last, I guess, kind of the resurrection point, if that's cool with you guys. I don't know if you had another. There's something that I loved that he had said in this book. It said, those whom Harry had befriended and encouraged through the years to come to realize the full extent of their own powers and willingly take on the evil of villains. It's that idea of the disciples in Acts. I mean, there's a clear shift in the disciples. It went from like cautious, worried, can we do this ourselves? Can we do this? And then when that sacrifice happened, I mean, it just shifted. And they went out and they did. I mean, if you read it, that's what revival looks like. I mean, people are bringing streets out to hope that Peter's shadow would touch them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Is this idea of, it's just a cool picture of me of like, all of a sudden they realize, wow, you know, as great as Harry was, we can do these things as well and take on the evil and take on what he left us with.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously the power of love, but that was another, that's all I have for, I'm not good at Harry Potter because I don't know what
No, you don't know it. That's okay. That's all good. You did good, John. You did real good.
The climax of the story is when Harry realizes that he basically has to go before Voldemort. In order to defeat Voldemort, he has to die.
Right.
And so as they're doing this, it's like Harry is thinking about all the friends and family that he's leaving behind, but ultimately doing this to protect them.
Yeah.
And so this idea of like self-sacrifice that Harry is kind of this selfless, in a way that he basically has to face death for his friends. And I think that's obviously a
Christian theme. Yeah,
absolutely. And so J.K. Rowling, as she was talking about this, kind of like how did she set up this theme? And she had the interview with Oprah Winfrey.
Oh yeah.
And she was talking about how she thought back to 9/11.
Yeah.
And as people are calling their loved ones, basically, you know, the last thing that they're going to hear is "I love you."
I love you. Yeah.
And so just that powerful theme of love.
Yeah.
Of just like and again, we go back to the scripture and what does God say? The greatest commandments, or basically all the commandments are summed up with love God and love people.
Yeah.
And so.
All right, so give me your parting thought here. You know, in a second. What just boiling this episode down? What's your takeaway, or what's the one thing? I'll let you guys think about that for a second.
Sure.
For me, it really just does come back to this idea that whether you want to watch Harry Potter or not, for me, it's just are you engaging culture? Are you looking for things? Are you looking for crossroads, places to make intersections with people's lives? Right. You know, can you take something that even if you don't want to watch Harry Potter or something like that, but can you take these themes and maybe wield that in such a way like Paul would do, like he knew the language of his day, he knew some of these themes, he knew his culture, that he could grab the Bible and be able to feed that into someone's lives. And we got to be willing to have some of those same conversations. So yeah,
and I think for me it comes down to the Mirror of Erised, like the kind of the desires. And so, you know, for Harry, it's like it's interesting at the end of the first film, they're basically, you know, Voldemort's fighting to get this thing called the Philosopher's Stone, and Dumbledore arranges it in such a way that only the people that want to get the stone but not use it for themselves, it's kind of like they can access this stone. And so Harry, obviously that selfless person, wants to do it. And so I think it's again laying down our own lives for the sake of others, and just being that person of, again, as we're talking, I mean, as two Christians, probably primarily. About, you know, kind of laying aside our own desires and really reaching out to people, to share Christ. Yeah. And that's,
John?
Mine was the same, actually. It says, it is our choices, Harry, that show you who you truly are, far more than our abilities. And then it goes into, despite having incredible magic powers, Harry doesn't really use them for personal gain. He has a heart to help others rather than himself. I think that's kind of the big thing that stuck out to me out of this is, and again, I was honestly surprised how much correlation there was through this reading. But yeah, I just, there's always a humility, and I know it's a story, but at the same time, that doesn't mean it's any less teachable. I use stories all the time in my sermons, and it's just a touching point. That's why Jesus used parables, because it's just easy to grab something from it. And just coming to that conclusion of just how selfless, he really was. He was groomed, and he knew that he was going to become, he was the chosen one. As Travis said, it started clicking in his head. It's like, I'm being groomed to do this. And the fact that he still chose to do that, even though he had to think about it every day. And to think of Jesus and just like, at any moment he could have been like, all right, angels, I'm done with them. Come down. It's just that humility strike in my gut. Of just like, gosh, I can't believe that you still chose to do that, because nothing about me deserved it. But I appreciate you did.
Well, I think we're going to land it there. And Travis, I appreciate you leaving your robe and wand at home and not bringing that this time. So, but listen, hopefully we provoke some, some thought and maybe some conversation future. Hey, if you know somebody who, is a Harry Potter fan and like maybe has not made some of these connections, hey, they might enjoy this podcast. And so again, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And we will see you next time.
Deuces.